Deany steps are located close to the township of Port Campbell. The steps were cut around the year 1940 as a labour scheme during the Depression. They were cut to provide access from the cliffs to the sea in case of emergency rescue, but were mostly used by locals fishing and cray fishing from the rocks below, as well as Port Campbell's few local surfers. The steps were dug using only picks and shovels. Men dug down about 40 metres back from the cliff edge, down a natural washaway, carving their way to the waterline at the appropriate angle. The diggers, however, misjudged the angle of the descent and came out of the cliff face too high up, about 30 to 40 metres above the sea level. This can be seen in the photos further along in this video. Where the vertical line stops, this is where the men came up short above the ocean's waterline. To get around this problem, a tunnel was dug to the west so that the men could come out above a large fallen rock formation, so they could then climb down to the water's edge. The men accomplished this and then lowered a large ladder down to the rocks below to be able to access the sea when it was calm. The steps were, however, very steep and nearly always wet from sea spray and lack of sunlight to dry them. So where the steps came out short on the cliff, 30 to 40 metres above the waterline, wooden boards were placed across the entrance before turning right into the tunnel. These boards were used so that if anybody slipped on the steps, they would have something to stop them from falling to the rocks below. On the 1st of January 1984, there were men out surfing and others on the rocks fishing for crayfish when a huge section of the cliff collapsed, burying the surfers' clothes and gear under the rocks. The section of the cliff that collapsed was about 200 metres in length, and from the top to the bottom of the cliff in height. The men had to walk back to Port Campbell along the cliffs, swimming water sections and climbing rocks, to make their way back to another set of steps, also dug by hand, about 2 kilometres west of Deany's, in order to return home. After the collapse, access was cut off to the steps immediately. On further inspection, a huge crack was found directly above the steps, and so on the 14th of February 1984, the steps were dynamited so they could not be used again. The charge that was set was meant to blow the steps and rocks out to sea and then crumble down upon itself after the explosion. Explosives were set in and around the newly discovered crack above the steps. At 3:30 p.m, the charge was ignited and the rock, limestone, instead of shooting out to sea safely, shot up in the air and showered the spectators, making all of them run for cover. When the steps were next inspected, they had caved in as planned, but the huge cracks that were thought to be unstable at the very beginning was left unchanged.